Hello, everyone. Some nights a house stays quiet, but it doesn't feel safe. A phone keeps buzzing on the table and no one reaches for it. A child watches the adults like he's already learned what leaving sounds like. And one sentence sits in the room, waiting to be tested. Lan first noticed it in the way Mai didn't rush. Everyone else moved fast when something urgent came in. Papers in hand, steps quick, voices clipped. But Mai walked like time belonged to her, even when the office was clearly on edge. That morning, the company floor was loud without being noisy. Phones ringing, footsteps, the low hum of people trying to keep up with orders that were suddenly too big to feel safe. Alex wasn't on the floor. He'd been pulled into back-to-back calls again. Partners, inspections, schedules, signatures. The kind of day where he was available, but never actually present. Lan sat at her desk with 3 screens open and a headache that wouldn't fully arrive yet. She was holding it off the way she held off panic, by staying busy. Then Mai appeared at the edge of Lan's desk with a folder and a polite, careful expression. "Can I have 1 minute?" Mai asked. Lan didn't love the tone. It was soft, too soft, like Mai was borrowing kindness to cover something sharp. "What is it?" Lan asked, keeping her voice even. Mai slid the folder forward. "It's just a proposal, for stability." Lan opened it, expecting a routine authorization plan, something temporary, something that would die in a meeting and be forgotten. At first glance, it looked reasonable. A long-term authorization document, a way for the CEO to assign signing power if he was unavailable. On paper, it sounded like responsibility. Lan read the first page slowly, then the second. Her fingers tightened without meaning to, because there it was, quietly placed, like it wasn't the real point. In urgent situations, acting authority transfers to... Lan felt her stomach drop in a way that didn't show on her face. She didn't react, not immediately. She didn't give Mai the satisfaction of a visible flinch, but her mind moved fast. A long-term authorization wasn't just a tool. It was a claim. It was someone planting their name in the place where Alex's name usually stood, just close enough to feel normal if nobody stopped it. Lan looked up. "This says you take over in emergencies." Mai nodded once, like that detail was obvious and harmless. "Only in urgent situations?" Lan kept her eyes on the paper. "Who decided that part?" Mai's smile stayed gentle. "It's logical. I'm already handling most urgent escalations. Partners talk to me when Alex is tied up. It prevents delays." Lan didn't answer right away. She turned a page she'd already read, buying herself 2 seconds. Across the desk, Mai passed behind Lan's chair with a stack of invoices. She glanced at the folder, saw the header, then slowed. Lan didn't call her over. She didn't need to. Mai's face tightened on its own. Mai leaned down slightly, pretending she was adjusting the papers on Lan's desk, and whispered, barely moving her lips. "She wants the chair." Lan's throat went dry. She didn't look at Mai. She only nodded once, small enough that Mai wouldn't catch it. Mai watched Lan closely, the way people watch a door when they're waiting to see if it opens. Lan closed the folder softly, not a slam, not a rejection. Just a quiet ending to the motion, like she was putting something dangerous back into its box. "I'll review it," Lan said. Mai tilted her head. "Could you send it to Alex today?" Lan met her eyes. "I said I'll review it." Mai didn't push. She didn't argue. She only smiled again and stepped back like she'd done nothing bold at all. "Of course," Mai said. "I just want to help the company stay steady." Then she walked away. And that was the first quiet tension beat, because nobody in the office argued. Nobody said, "This is inappropriate." Nobody laughed and treated it like a joke. The floor stayed busy, the phones kept ringing, people kept typing, but the air shifted in a way Lon couldn't explain to someone who didn't know power. It wasn't agreement. It was the moment everyone recognized something had just been taken, without a signature, without a fight. A few desks away, a manager picked up the folder copy Lan had printed and scanned the clause again, then set it down like it burned. Someone else cleared their throat and said nothing. Mai passed the glass-walled meeting room and paused long enough to look inside, as if she was imagining herself seated at the head of the table. Then she continued walking, calm as ever. Lan sat still for 2 seconds too long. Then she moved. She didn't message Alex first. She didn't ask permission. She took the folder and stood up. Mai looked up. "Where are you going?" Lan didn't raise her voice. "To someone who won't hesitate." Mai's mouth tightened in approval, but she didn't follow. She stayed at her desk, eyes tracking Mai across the floor like she was watching a storm from a distance. Lon walked past the assistants, past the framed awards, past the corridor where Alex usually moved like the building belonged to him. She turned toward a different office, the one that hadn't existed last week, the one that only existed because Tu Na had become more than a private matter. Alex's mother had come to the company unannounced the day before. She hadn't asked for a schedule, she'd changed it. And the staff, for the first time, had felt what it meant when someone's authority didn't come from a title on paper. It came from the fact that everyone knew she would do what she said. Lon reached the door and knocked once. "Come in," a voice said, calm, controlled. Lon stepped inside. Alex's mother sat behind the desk like she had always belonged there. Her handbag was on the chair beside her, still closed. Not because she was casual, but because she didn't waste movement on anything unnecessary. She didn't ask Lon to sit. She didn't offer tea. She looked up once and said, "Show me." Lon placed the folder on the desk without speaking. Alex's mother opened it and read with a kind of speed that didn't miss details. Her eyes moved down the page, then stopped at the clause. She didn't react the way most people reacted. No surprise, no anger, just a quiet stillness. Then she turned one page back and read the header again, as if she was confirming the insult. Finally, she looked at Lan. "Who wrote this?" Lan answered carefully. "Mai." Alex's mother nodded once, as if she'd expected that answer. "She asked you to send it to Alex," Lon added. Alex's mother's mouth tightened slightly. Not a smile, not a frown, a decision. "Bring her in," she said. Lon hesitated, not because she disagreed, but because she suddenly felt the weight of what was about to happen. Mai wasn't loud. Mai wasn't careless. Mai was patient, and patient people didn't forget public humiliation. Alex's mother noticed Lon's hesitation immediately. Her voice stayed quiet. "Don't worry," she said. "This isn't a scene. It's a lesson." Lon nodded and turned to leave. As she reached for the door handle, a second quiet tension beat landed. Small, easy to miss, but sharp if you knew what it meant. From the hallway outside, Mai's voice drifted in, sweet and calm, speaking to someone on the floor. "Yes," Mai was saying, "I understand the new boundaries. It's all for the family right now." The way she said family wasn't respectful. It was strategic. Lon froze for half a breath, hands still on the handle. Alex's mother heard it too. Her eyes didn't change, but something in the room hardened. Lan opened the door and stepped into the corridor. Mai turned at the same time, like she'd been waiting. Their eyes met. Mai smiled politely. Lan didn't smile back. Madam wants to see you. Mai's eyebrows lifted just a fraction. Madam? Lan held her gaze. Now. Mai didn't ask why. She didn't look nervous. She didn't rush to fix her hair or adjust her blouse like someone guilty. She only nodded once, slow. Of course, she said. Then Mai walked past Lan toward the office, her posture perfect, her face calm. But her hand, just for a second, tightened around the phone she was holding, like she was gripping something smaller than fear. Lan followed 2 steps behind, and as Mai stepped into the room, Alex's mother looked up from the authorization paper and spoke before anyone could soften the moment. Tell me, she said, voice even, who exactly gave you permission to place yourself above my son? Mai didn't stop walking. She crossed the room with the same measured pace, as if the question hadn't landed like a slap. She stood in front of the desk and lowered her chin just slightly. Respect on the surface, calculation underneath. Permission? Mai repeated softly. No one gave permission. I wrote a safeguard. Alex's mother didn't blink. A safeguard for the company, she said, or a safeguard for you. Mai held the silence for a beat, then answered like she'd practiced it. The company is under pressure, she said. Orders are high, partners are strict. If the CEO can't appear, the whole line stops. I only suggested a structure. Lan stayed by the door, hands clasped behind her back. She watched Mai's face the way she watched contracts, looking for the clause that would hurt them later. Alex's mother slid the document closer to Mai with 2 fingers. Read this part out loud. Mai's eyes dropped to the page. She didn't flinch. She read exactly what was written. In urgent situations, acting authority transfers to Mai. Her voice stayed calm. Too calm. Alex's mother let the words sit in the room for a long moment, long enough that Lan could hear the building outside. Footsteps, phones, a printer feeding paper like it didn't know anything had changed. Why you? Alex's mother asked. Mai didn't rush. Because I'm already the one partner's contact when Alex is unavailable, she said. Because I have access. Because I can make decisions quickly. Alex's mother tilted her head slightly, and Lan can't. Mai's gaze flicked toward Lan, fast, controlled. Lan is excellent, Mai said, but Lan doesn't have the authority partners listen to. They want Alex, Alex's mother cut in. Mai paused. It was a small pause, but it was the first crack. Alex's mother kept her voice even. And if they can't get Alex, you want them to get you. Mai's jaw tightened, then relaxed again. She chose softness. I want them to get someone who keeps the company alive, she said. Alex's mother leaned back in the chair. You keep saying alive like this is a hospital, she said. This is a company. Companies recover. Families don't recover the same way. Mai's eyes stayed steady. With respect, madam, the company isn't a hobby. Thousands of people depend on it. Lan felt the air tighten. Because Mai wasn't wrong. Not fully. That was how Mai worked. She didn't lie. She built truth into a weapon. Alex's mother nodded once, as if acknowledging the point without giving it power. And where do you think Alex is right now, she asked. Mai hesitated, only for a breath. At home, she said. With his wife, Alex's mother added quietly, and his child. Mai's lips pressed together. Alex's mother tapped the paper. This document doesn't protect the company, she said. It creates a future where people start asking for you instead of him. Slowly, quietly, and by the time anyone notices, it feels normal. Mai didn't deny it. She didn't confess. She only said, "It's standard practice. Many CEOs sign delegations." Alex's mother's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. Standard practice is also how people justify taking what isn't theirs. Mai's eyes sharpened. "So what do you want, madam?" The question was careful, polite, but it wasn't small. Alex's mother answered without raising her voice. "I want you to stop positioning yourself," she said. "Stop using stability as a ladder, and stop placing your name where my son's name belongs." Mai's shoulders stayed straight. "If Alex stays absent, someone will have to carry it." Alex's mother nodded. "Yes," she said. "Someone will, and it won't be you." Mai's face tightened, just slightly. "Then who?" Alex's mother looked toward Lan for the first time since Mai entered. "Lan," she said. Lan's chest tightened. Not with pride, with weight. Mai's eyes moved to Lan like a camera refocusing. "Lan," she repeated, soft, almost amused. Lan didn't speak. She didn't need to. Alex's mother went on. "From today," she said, "any urgent signing goes through Lan. Any meeting Alex cannot attend. Lan assigns a deputy. Not you. Not because you're incompetent. Because this is not your lane." Mai's voice dropped. "You're asking the company to gamble." Alex's mother's gaze didn't move. "No," she said. "I'm refusing to gamble with my son's name." Mai took a slow breath through her nose. "And if a contract dies," Alex's mother replied without hesitation, "then it dies." Mai stared as if she couldn't believe someone would say it out loud. Lan felt it too, the shock of it. In this building, contracts were treated like blood, but Alex's mother didn't live by the company's religion. She lived by something older. Mai tried once more, quieter now. "Madam, you don't understand these partners?" Alex's mother's tone stayed calm. "I understand men who test boundaries," she said. "I understand people who smell weakness and push." She leaned forward slightly. "And I understand this," she said. "If Alex becomes a man who can be replaced by the nearest person with ambition, he will come home one day and realize he has also been replaced. Here." Lan felt the sentence sink into the floorboards. Mai's face didn't change much, but her eyes did. Something cooled. She lowered her chin again. "I understand," she said. Alex's mother watched her. "Do you?" Mai nodded once, slow. "Yes." She turned to leave. Alex's mother spoke one more time before Mai reached the door. "And Mai," she said. Mai paused. Alex's mother's voice stayed steady. "Don't make calls to Alex when he is at home," she said. "Not even urgent ones. Lan is your channel. If you bypass that, I will treat it as disrespect." Mai looked back. "Understood." She stepped into the hallway. Lan followed her out, closing the office door behind them. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The corridor felt too bright. Mai kept walking. Lan matched her pace, just enough to show she wasn't afraid. Then, Mai spoke, quietly, without turning her head. "She trusts you," Mai said. Lan didn't answer. Mai continued, voice calm. "That's rare," she said. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Lan stopped walking. Mai stopped too, as if she'd expected Lan to finally react. Lan looked at her. "What do you want, Mai?" Mai smiled faintly. "Nothing," she said. "Just stability." Lan held her gaze. "That word isn't yours anymore." Mai's smile didn't leave, but it thinned. She looked away first, then she walked on. Lan watched her go, and she felt something unpleasant settle in her stomach. Because Mai wasn't loud. Mai was the kind of person who didn't argue when a door closed. She looked for windows. Lan went back to her desk and sat down. She opened her inbox, and the first message staring back was from a partner. Subject: confirmation required. CEO presence. Lan stared at the subject line and felt her throat tighten. The timing was too perfect to be an accident. She didn't know if Mai had triggered it or if the company's pressure was simply arriving on its own. But she knew one thing. The moment Alex's mother tightened the circle around Alex's home, the company didn't soften. It pushed harder. Lan typed a reply. CEO is currently unavailable. We can confirm within the hour with authorized signature. She hovered over send. Then her phone buzzed. A short, internal message. From Mai. Mai just walked past the boardroom. She's smiling. Lan's fingers went cold. She stared at the email again. Then at the empty space on her desk where Alex usually dropped his keys when he was rushing. And in the middle of all that noise, Lan thought of one quiet thing she had overheard at the wooden house the night before. Tu Na's voice. Not loud, not dramatic. Just be here. Lan swallowed and hit send anyway. Outside her glass wall, the office kept moving like it always did. But Lan felt, for the first time, that the company wasn't just under pressure. It was testing who would break first. And somewhere far from this building, in a wooden house that had learned the sound of phones, Alex was trying to stay still, while the world kept calling his name like it owned him.